Like, I feel like that the men especially needs to realize that none of this is really personal. Really, it's not. It's not.
You're listening to the In Your Pants podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Susie Gronsky, your penis-friendly pelvic health physical therapist, sex counselor, and educator, helping you get in the know down below. Hi friends, Dr. Susie G here, and welcome to another In Your Pants podcast. On today's show, I talk with Mistress Mariko. Mistress Mariko Sakai is a coach, but she's not just any coach. She's a sex, love, and relationship coach, a businesswoman mindset with a sales background. And she talks to us about breaking the ice when initiating relationships in the online world, and gives practical advice on how to initiate these conversations and make connections and relationships with our authentic selves. Mistress Mariko talks to us about consent and how important that is throughout the entire course of any relationship, whether sexually or otherwise. And she also talks to us about her approach using shadow work and how shadow work can really help men, and really anyone, experience fulfilling and meaningful sexual and romantic relationships. You definitely don't want to miss this episode. It is jam-packed with practical advice from Mistress Mariko. And if you enjoyed the show, please be sure to subscribe by hitting that button below if you're on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, please be sure to check out my channel there, or subscribe to whichever podcasting platform that is your favorite. We appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the show. Mariko, so nice to see you. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Susie. It is an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Very kind. So, Mariko, let's talk about consent, because I know that it can be a topic that is pretty sensitive, but also there might be some lack of clarity around. Like, can we talk about what consent is when you're in the dating world, or you're just starting to, put yourself out there? You met someone online, you started to connect, maybe FaceTime, virtually in person, but now you're in person. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about consent. What does that mean? How can people feel more comfortable engaging with consent with each other?
Yeah, right. Well, thank you so much for that question, because it's like, I see that there's a lot of confusion out there, and actually there shouldn't be any confusion. So consent is that the yes is a hell yes. And everything else, like a maybe or yes or no, all of this is a no. It's clear, so clear. Another thing I will say about the consent is that if someone said hell yes under the influence, or like either like you are in the act. So, for example, that the person said, well, I don't know, well, maybe, when I get there, maybe I will say yes or no. That means a no. And that the yes, when the people consented to something, hell yes, but that you get into a sexual situations, and then the person now turn into a no. That means you stop immediately. You do not have consent. It doesn't really mean that the earlier you had a consent. If it's a no now, it's a no.
Right. It's revocable, right? Like the consent, right? So right. Consent is always revocable. That's what.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Period. Period.
Yes. And then so when I said earlier about the under the influence, it doesn't count, right?
Right.
So so that's under the influence. includes, of course, alcohol, drugs, all of those things. But also, if you are in the act already, like for example, like if you are in this, so this comes up in the BDSM situation. Let's say that I'm in with a submissive, and then the submissive in a state called the subspace, which is this kind of a state where basically this person cannot even keep standing. Meaning like all these hormones are going through. And if the person says hell yes, that doesn't count either.
That is a helpful clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. So with this, everything else that is not a hell yes is a no. It is very clear. It is very clear. And so there's no confusion. So again, if you just ask yourself that if the answer is hell yes, it's a yes, everything else, no, then there's no mistake. There's no mistake.
Right, right. And I imagine that if somebody is, let's say somebody is adding a softener around, maybe like you were saying, like they're like softeners. They're like, oh, maybe, I'm not sure. And you're the person that's wanting to get either a hell yes or a hell no to really just say, so then that's a hell. I'm going to take that as a no right now because I need a hell yes. Right. But also
correct.
You brought up like the BDSM community and power dynamics, right? Because
yes,
I can only imagine that power dynamics are going to matter. I mean, they're existing all the time, but they're definitely going to matter when somebody is choosing to consent or not consent, and how power influences that decision.
Yes, that's right. Yes. So, yes. So if you are the dominant, it is a really strong responsibility that I'm mentored by Mr. Damiana Chi, who teaches this concept of not just being consensual is not enough. That as a dominant, we have to be ethical as well. And I really believe in that. And then so, again, it's like this type of question, if you ask yourself, one, let's say that, okay, so this kind of be specifically in this scenario where you are the dominant, and then you're speaking with your submissive, or like in that particular dynamic, I would encourage, or I would require myself to really ask the question, okay, so yes, I have a consent, but is it ethical to do this thing that he or she is asking me to do? I will think of that. And then that's kind of beyond consent. And I just say that this is the way I'm taught. And then this is the way I also believe that as a dominant, there's going to be another layer that is beyond consent, that I'm very aware of. And then I really want to encourage everyone who consider to be, or plays a role of a dominant, to really kind of instill this idea that, okay, consent alone, not just that being hell yes. Me personally, like I said, I believe it is important that whatever that you do is ethical as well.
Yes. Oh, so important. Consent, ethics, aligning with your values, aligning with your morals. Thank you. Thank you so much for engaging in that. Very important topic.
You're welcome.
So tell us a little bit about your work that you do. It is highly specialized. It's very unique. And I'd love to hear more about how you got into it.
Yeah, thank you. So I specialize in, so first of all, I'm a sex, love, and relationship coach. I'm a certified tantric sex coach, dating coach, and also I am certified in female domination and ethical BDSM. So, but from a coaching perspective, in those areas, I specialize in shadow work. And the reason why I got so fascinated by shadow work is that in my personal experience, where I was one of those people, like how can I be like this unshakably confident person, like this powerful person? And even though people are seeing me as that, I knew that this is not all of me. I knew about that. And then I was so frustrated about the fact that I don't have access to all of the power that I know I have. And I worked so hard on different areas, and then I was not getting that. And it just so happened that in my life, that power that I knew I had, but I didn't have access to, was hidden underneath my shadows. And when I discovered that, I'm like, wow, I was not going there because that was shadowy area. And then if I was never had the opportunity that my life forced me to look into that area, I will be living in my area like less than half of what I could have, for my potential. So I became so like such a big advocate of like, okay, shadow work may sound scary, but it actually isn't. And then this might be the things that you're looking for everywhere, but it's actually here. So that's why I got really, really fascinated and then decided to specialize in shadow work.
Oh, well, it sounds like it definitely liberating. So as you go through that process, and it sounds like through your own experience, how freeing that was to actually connect with yourself in an authentic way, in a way that you're able to really have a presence in the world that connects with your mind, at your heart, and in all that you do. So speaking of shadow work, I would like to, since we're talking about it, how does shadow work help men experience a more fulfilling sexual and romantic relationship? Like how do you use shadow work with your clients?
So it can be used in a number of different ways, but here's like when I know that the person will benefit from shadow work is when the man is confused about what to do, like how to be, who to be. Because there is this image of him that he has in his mind that, oh, I need to be this, like, I don't know, like a maybe strong alpha male. For example, right? This is the way that he thinks that, I want to be, and I want to present myself to be in this world. And so this image of man. And then here is that the real person, a man who isn't exactly that. So, that's kind of like, he has this awareness that, well, even though I feel like I need to be alpha male, I'm really not, So when you have this gap, and then when you're trying to show up in the world and trying to connect with people, there's a lot of doubts and a waste of energy and power in that people are very confused what to do, what to say, how to connect with people, how to express themselves. And then so when you are in that state, you are not able to connect authentically with other people. So a lot of what the shadow work does is like to clear all the clutter and then confusion about who are you. When you notice that and you really own it, then there is no confusion. I was like, okay, so how many conversations do I need to have in order for me to ask for a date? Like how many times do I need to have a date in order to do a first kiss or first sex? There is no confusion when you fully know and showing up as who you are. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. It actually resonates in a way that there's so much oftentimes shame and embarrassment about leaning into such vulnerable or sensitive topics, or expressing oneself authentically, and even knowing what that means for someone, right? Because if I love your use of the shadow of, if we're hiding behind our shadows and we're hiding around these shadows for how can we show up authentically in in relationship, and how does that even navigate as far as our ability to connect and even just put ourselves out there or to relate to one another in a way that is genuine?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. And then so like as after I became a single person, I've been meeting a lot of people, for my personal life, like dating. And then I talk to a lot of men. And then like some of the time, like sometimes I hear something like, oh, you know what? I'm so afraid of like leading a conversation because I don't want to be seen as creepy or predatory or, some weird guy. And then so again, in that situation, people will look for like outside guidance, like, how many weeks should I be having a text conversation? And when do I need to take this conversation to phone or in person, having a coffee date or whatever it is? But the more that they focus on that, and then I understand that people don't want to be seen as creepy or the predatory. And then these men know that they are not the creepy guy. But here the interesting part about the shadow work, in shadow work, I help men own that creepy part of them. And then really embody that creepy predatory men. I'm talking about in consensual context, like a simulation, practice these aspects of themselves. And then that experience, in my experience, help them to really own that part, but not becoming that part. So like in this example of creepy man, it is in my experience that people enact or embody the creepy man in simulation consensual context. Then he will have an embodied understanding that he is not a creepy guy and will know what to do without worrying about, am I being creepy? Like, what should I do? How long do I wait? So does that make sense?
Yeah. So I'm curious. So creepy man analogy, I think, is an interesting choice of words, because I'm curious as to what, for men, like in your experience of working with men, what is it about an experience for them that makes them feel that they may potentially be considered or categorized or labeled as creepy?
You mean like what experience they actually have to be considered creepy?
Or what narrative, socially or otherwise, what does it mean to be a creepy man?
That's actually a good question. I suppose like maybe men who are too aggressive, like asking for phone number too quickly or something when the other person's not interested, perhaps. So if the other person is interested in giving the phone number, it's not a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then if the other person is not interested in giving you a phone number, and if you feel like you asked that too fast, then you feel like, oh, maybe I was too creepy, something like that, right? And so like whenever that they feel like experience kind of a rejection of, things when they express themselves and then don't get the results that they are looking for, maybe, he may, blame the fact that, oh, maybe there are so many creepy men up there that, maybe I look creepy, even though I'm not.
Ultimately, it sounds like there's a self-judgment being imposed.
Yeah. And also there is like a kind of a collective wound of the society where, like there is just like always like these stories of, like the men who are predatory and then got caught, but there is always men who were not. And then so like we have the kind of a collectively kind of build up this society, like a perception about men that, they could be creepy, they could be predatory, or, like, and then so like people are, some men that I talk to definitely very aware that they don't want to be seen like that. And then, like, oh, that's not me. And I really want to make sure that I don't do anything inappropriate to, or make other people feel uncomfortable. And, So they try to basically like try to kind of walk around the eggshell, so to speak, not to trying to do trying not to do the wrong thing. And then in that process, they just kind of forget what was important and then what they were doing in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying now. I have some clarity around the fact that as being the pursuer, the chaser, or the aggressor, right? Because there's often this socially, culturally accepted norm that men are generally held to the standard of, hey, you're the one that's going to be the initiator, and you're the one that's going to be the pursuer, and you're the one that's going to be the aggressor, romantically and sexually, in these situations. And you're right. I mean, even in my own experience of working with men, it's like, why a lot of them are like, I'm not like that. I don't want to be perceived as that. But the reality is that there is these negative narratives around gender norms that are infiltrating, our experiences.
Yeah. So really what I'm trying to do is to just kind of make people free from those narratives and just help them operate from their own directive, or the GPS, so to speak. And I feel like this cutting off this kind of a signals that they perceive from this narrative, cutting that off and then really focus on what comes from within, that alone will just kind of like, it will put, people in a state of like, okay, what kind of man am I? You don't even have to worry about it. You will know what to do,
Absolutely. Right. Again, freedom, authenticity. Yeah. So for men listening out there, what advice do you give to them to, when you're trying to meet someone romantically or otherwise, or establish some sort of relationship? And let's say, for example, online, because so many of us are connecting more online. That's just where, technology is taking us. How can people break the ice and get to know each other in many different ways, in this more authentic, genuine way that we're talking about?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that question. So before I kind of talk about like the specific details of how to do, which I'm going to be happy to get into, I just want to kind of paint a picture of a pyramid. And then the pyramid has a big base. And then like at the top of that, the pyramid is like this, I would like people to see like this kind of a most significant relationship you have, sexually and always fulfilling relationship at the top of the pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid is all of the relationship that the people that you are surrounded by. And the quality of each of these relationships in this pyramid determines the quality of the relationship at the top of the pyramid. This is what I believe. So every conversation, even if you're not dating, every conversation, every connection you have in your pyramid, in your circle, determines everything that you experience in your relationship. And then so for the next portion, in this reply, I'm going to talk about what that looks like in this conversation, like this conversation of at the very base or the beginning stage of the conversation when two people are meeting. Okay, so most important principle is that you are genuinely interested in the other person. And you are not trying to be interesting.
That's a pretty big distinction you're making there.
Yes. And then this actually comes from my sales training. I have a ton of sales training, prospecting training, online and offline. And then so when I started dating, I realized, oh my God, dating and sales are exactly the same.
Wow.
So
That's
So,
interesting.
yes, it is. So, I'm going to teach you some techniques that I learned from sales, and then I'm going to take you from a kind of take a scenario of meeting people online, and then how to take it offline, and just taking the example of like a long distance relationship or something like that, and assuming that the people are local, or even if the person is not local, that the objective is that if you are truly interested in that person, that the as soon as possible take the conversation that is, like a online texting to a offline as soon as possible. And then when I say offline, in the case of like there is a great distance, I'm talking about like a video meeting like this, like Zoom meeting or FaceTime or whatever it is. So that's like kind of progression. Okay, so how does it look like when two people meet and then showing that you are interested in the other person and not trying to be interesting? So what that looks like is that you're going to be asking a open-ended questions to the other person about the other person. And then obviously the open-ended question is not like, what's the weather like over there? That's not that's not a question that you're interested in the other person, right? So in the case of like meeting people on social media or like the dating app, here's what I recommend, and I do, that I read the other person's profile, and then notice something. First of all, there's an assumption that you are genuinely interested in this person. You really want to get to know this person, based on what's written in the profile. So then you will pick something, you will read everything in the profile, and then you'll pick a few things that are very specific about that you like about the person. And then you will say that in your first message. So it will sound something like this. So it has to be very specific. You cannot say, like, oh, your profile is so awesome and beautiful and blah, blah, blah. No, 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 no. You have to say something very specific, right? Yeah. And then so it will sound like something like, I really, I read your profile and I really like the choice of words that you made. And then I really enjoy like the kind of a vibe that comes through in between your lines, or like, from your pictures, something like that. I say something very specific like that. And when I write a message like that to a man, I receive like enthusiastic response. Like they will say something like, wow, I've never received such a nice message from a woman. Like, oh, really? Every time. So, and then every time I receive a message like that, I'll tell them like, oh my God, like even if I read the profile of the person and I'm like, well, he's really not my type, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But if the message was very specific and it shows that he actually read it and it really expressed that specific things that he liked in my profile, I always reply.
Mm-hmm.
I always reply. It works. And then, so let's say that you get a response.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you so much for the message. Like after you write those specific things. And then, so here's where you will start asking a open-ended questions. And when you are doing this back and forth, again, we are still in the texting, virtual communication. You are asking, because this is like, you don't really know this person other than what you read in the profile. And then so you're going to pick something that is a common object between the two of you. So in the case of, so let's say I'm meeting someone on dating app. I will say something like, so I will pick a mutual object that are common between the two of us. So in that case, that's that the dating app. Let's say I'm on Hinge, and then like, okay, so I might say something like, "Hey, it is nice to meet you. How long have you been on Hinge? And how do you like it so far?" So that's like very non-threatening. So let's say that I have a picture of me in the bikini in my profile, and if the guy says something like, "Oh, I really love that bikini. I really like the way that your nipples are showing," or something like that. Okay, so that's a no-no, right? I mean, that's just an obvious example, but like just say like, don't pick something too personal, even if you think it's a compliment. Just
Fair.
pick something really generic and common, and then just kind of start a conversation. Yeah. And then whenever like there is like, and then this will come very quickly. If both of the two people are trying to really get to know the other person, there's going to be a time where one person will ask something, a question that is kind of like, I want to answer, but I don't want to answer in text. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so hard to get the entire context of the meaning of something through text or messaging.
Exactly. So when it comes to that, and then in my experience, it comes very quickly. And I will say, you know what, I would love to answer that question, but I feel like text is really not suited for that. And I feel like I would love to answer this, this question in live conversation. Phone, FaceTime, Zoom, what works best for you? And I shut up. And usually the next thing is like we are exchanging phone numbers, and then we are talking. Yeah. So that's kind of how it works.
That is so practical.
Yes.
Mariko, that is so practical and helpful and hopeful for people to say, okay, I'm a little nervous, I'm a little shy, I'm not sure how to proceed, connecting with people online. And there was something that you had in the topics, we were discussing topics off the air and before we started recording, about this offline versus online myth about it's not as genuine or organic, offline versus online. I like to meet people in person. It kind of is like, it seems to me like this is an opportunity for people to see that, hey, this might be a low stakes situation where you can actually authentically connect with someone to see if you two actually want to engage energetically to pursue moving forward, even seeing each other in person, right? And doing it in a way that feels, comfortable and safe and still genuine. The other person might not be receptive, right? And that was going to be my other question too, is how do you help your clients navigate the unresponsiveness back if let's say they try to engage online and they really want to connect with someone, but the other person just isn't reciprocating in the same way? How do we navigate those feelings? There's a lot of feelings that are going to come up in that scenario.
Right. Okay, that's an excellent question. Okay, so so first of all, in sales or dating or any relationship, there are two people, right? And then the relationship between the two people is like a third entity that has a life of its own. So as long as both parties are contributing to this third entity that's called relationship between the two people, but the relationship will live. However, like you're saying in this example of question, that if only one person is contributing it can still grow, or it can definitely stay there, but it's not going to be a sustainable, healthy relationship, right? Yeah. So one thing I want to make sure that it is actually not intentional, kind of a mismatch in the energy. Is that one, that the conversation is flowing by, like the person who is interested in this, ending the question or conversation with open-ended questions. If you are not, then you shouldn't be expecting a reply. You have to, by ending your message or conversation with the open-ended question, that the ball is in the other person's the court. So if that person is not responding to that, of course, there is a couple different ways that we can interpret that, right? So one, want to make sure that the person who is pursuing this relationship is ending the conversation with open-ended question, or it is clear that the ball is in the other side of the court. Often that the people are not aware that where the ball is. So like the other person may be waiting, like, oh, he's not giving me, I'm kind of waiting more for him to say, that there is that. So just want to make sure that the people are clear where the ball is.
Mm.
Okay. So once that where the ball is clear for both parties, the one reason why that the other person is not responding is that the other person is not interested. There is definitely that possibility.
Certainly. Which doesn't feel good, right? If someone's, it's kind of feeling, the feelings of rejection and non-acceptance
sure.
or what have you. All those feels can come up, which can be quite challenging to navigate.
Yes. So again, I learned this in sales, that when I, let's say I send a message to a prospect and then I'm not getting a response, like I'm getting a crickets, right? I'm like, wow, maybe, she didn't like me, or maybe I was too pushy, or maybe I was like this and that and that. Like I started making these stories in my head, right?
As we do, as we all do.
Yes. So here is a kind of an easy trick that you can kind of clear all of the doubts and all the stories in your head. Okay, so send a message like this. Hey, are you doing okay? That's it. I'm worried about you. Are you doing okay? And shut up. So, if you don't hear anything about that after the message, maybe it is, that's a clear message that, the person is completely ignoring you. I mean, there's no doubt. Often when I do this, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was so busy. Like this happened and that happened. And I'm like, my God, I'm so sorry. This is usually the case. So it's like, instead of creating these stories, just after waiting for a bit, just send that, hey, I'm worried about you. Are you doing okay? That's it.
That's just so much lighter to
I know, right?
work with.
I know. It's so simple.
It is very simple and hard at the same time, right? Because going back to the shadow work that you were talking about, all those are shadows, right? The filling in the blank, the blah 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 blah. I like to call it blah 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 blah. All the stories that we make up in our head. Those are the shadows that really just really darken the world and create just such heaviness of around a situation that really doesn't need to be so heavy. And in fact, we're just making it up because we really don't know what's going on for the other person. So I really like that you said, just reach out and see how they're doing, right? It isn't a message of, hey, I haven't heard from you. Thanks for ghosting me or whatever it is, right? You're actually, again, going back to so many points that you made earlier about being authentic and genuinely interested in the person. So when you do say a message to check in on that person, to say, how are you doing? How are you? It genuinely does present as, I really just want to know how you are as a person, what's going on for you in your world. It's not about me.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's it. So So let's talk about also a situation where that you're actually being ghosted.
Yes,
You send that
let's.
message. You send that message and you really hear nothing.
Yeah.
So whenever I find that, this is what I tell myself again. Yes, that person may be saying that, he's not interested in me or she's not interested in me, but there is still good chance that he just met somebody else, on dating app. And I've actually experienced that. Like some people said to me, like, hey, you know what? I'm so sorry that I didn't respond to you for a while, but I just met someone and it's going well. So I don't want you to think that I'm ignoring you. But there are many people who don't even bother to tell me. And then I'm like, I'm the same way, honestly. Like, and I know it's not the same between the men and women. I know that there are more men on dating app than women
Mm-hmm.
are. So I understand, but because of that, like I feel like that the men especially needs to realize that none of this is really personal. Really, it's
Great
not. It's
advice.
not. It really isn't. And then in many cases, I feel that, and I believe, and then that based on my experience, that when people don't respond, one, either that they just found something that is more in alignment, that's good for them, and then good for me as well, because I mean I have so many other people that are responding to me, and then that may be a good alignment with me, and so really nothing really changed. Um, it just we got clarity. That's
Right.
all. You know? Yeah.
Which is huge. And I love that you said, don't take it personal. That's right. I mean, there's no, it's human nature. It's nature in our world, in all different species, that
Mm-hmm.
not everyone's going to get along with everyone or have that same energetic exchange.
Yes.
And that's okay. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And to say, you know what, I'm going to let that match point go. Like if you were a tennis player or some sort of athlete and you missed a goal or you missed a shot, if you let that get under your skin, there is
Mm-hmm.
no way you would be able to continue the game and
Mm-hmm.
win eventually, right? If we let those I'm just going to go back to the shadows. If we let that shadow really, really take over, because it's
Mm-hmm.
impossible to persevere and to keep going forward and to let it go, so that
Mm-hmm.
maybe some other better opportunity is waiting for you or a better
Mm-hmm.
connection is waiting for you.
Yes. Yes. And for me, that the way I was able to truly believe in that, like not focusing on like the loss and it's feeling like I was not desired, or, when I was able to really be the person, like, okay, if they don't want to talk to me because they found somebody else, or like, whatever the reason is, it's really their loss. And so, when I became that confident, that unshakable confidence, is really when I really truly own all parts of me. That includes those parts that I'm like, I was not willing to own before. Right.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
can't explain it, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I go back to so much that you said earlier, because it just ties in so beautifully to what we're talking about, is embodying all those parts of you, and including those shadows, or including the parts that are uncomfortable and the uncomfortable feelings. Because if we just allow ourselves to be with, then that creates the freedom to move forward. But if we just repress or we ignore or we completely absorb ourselves within that,
No.
misconception, fear, false evidence appearing real. I
Yes.
didn't make that up just
Uh-huh.
now. I got it from someone
Oh,
else. I
I
have no
know.
idea where they got it from. But yes, it's really about taking perspective and again moving forward, even in the face of adversity, but changing that adversity into something positive.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Right. Yeah. And then so that's why I'm just so fascinated by shadow work because, like I said, it's in this belief that let's say about I am this or I am not this, in that belief that you're so in love with, that you're so attached to, it's usually there.
Right.
Yes.
We all have it, I mean, we,
Yes.
all of us in different forms, different shadows, many, many, and yeah, embodying them, embracing awareness through the awareness. It's gathering awareness and recognizing, how is this serving me right now? And is this really, really stopping me and holding me back from this unshakable, I like how you said, this unshakable confidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Like, what would
And
life
it
be
is.
like?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And then so, yes, I would love everyone to experience that, like how that feels like, and I truly believe in that, like I experienced like in my life, like I start to interact with someone and then like turns out to be like really bad experience, and then when I experience something like that, like I used to think that, oh my God, I'm so stupid. And, like to get myself in that kind of, like I wasted my time, like I used to think that. But now I really feel like, oh my God, I'm so glad that, he just kind of took, like took the trust took care of itself kind of a thing. And then, really, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful place to be. And I really want everyone to have that much, power and then really own it, no matter how that looks like, yeah, I just love that. I love to help people experience that.
Oh, and your passion, Mariko, is so permeable through this screen. In our many, we have talked, just so the listeners and viewers out there know, we have had a few correspondences off the air and connections. And it's so palpable. It is so palpable, your passion in everything that you do. And speaking of your passion to help others, please share with us how folks can connect with you if they're interested in harnessing their power and showing up in the world as their authentic, genuine self and doing the shadow work. Where can they connect with you? How where do you live on the online?
Okay, so I have a website. The URL is mistressmariko.com. And so that is the best place to find me. And I would also, so in my website, there is also a link to my TEDx talk, but I would love for you to watch that. And then I wish I can kind of give you like a nice resource or program that I already have, but I don't yet.
Coming soon.
Yeah, but I definitely there's definitely like a couple of different ways to reach me, and also like I have I can definitely be a resource. I mean, people can work with me in session, but also like a lot of the coaching stuff is like it's very I really believe in like that the true match, just like kind of a dating. And then so like I have like a lot of colleagues that does different sex, relationship, love coaching, and they may not necessarily specialize in that, but like I also have a community of dominatrix friends that they will be actually, if people have a kinky or non-vanilla desires.
Love that.
Actually, that's I guess we are not going to get into that, but I really want to really stress, if there are people out there that they feel like their sexual I identity, who they are, how they want to express that desire that they have, if you're judging what that is, that's the kind of thing that it just fires me up. I love to help people actually experience that and then how that feels like to not only sexually, but as a person. How does that make you feel? And then so I will be happy to be the resource or like the person who would refer to whomever that might be a better fit. But yeah, please find me in mistressmariko.com.
Thank you, Mariko. So we'll definitely have that in the show notes and your social media handles as well so that people can connect with you. I so appreciate you being on the show with me today and for sharing such very practical, genuine, authentic advice for folks to connect with their genuine selves and not be afraid to tap into maybe some of those shadows and embrace them and work with them. So just have a freer relationships and also sexuality.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And then it was really an honor and it's so much fun to be a guest at your podcast. And then I'm so grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Likewise. And to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for being here. As always, in loving wellness for your pelvis, this is Dr. Susie Gronsky. See you later.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Be sure to visit my website, drsuzieg.com, for show notes and related resources on today's topic. If you like what you're hearing, head on over to YouTube and subscribe to my channel. On my YouTube channel, you'll find content related to sex, pelvic health, and expert interviews for men. If you got a question or a topic that you'd like me to answer on my channel, be sure to type it in the comment box below.